Hello, my name is Keith Elliott. Welcome to FlipAgain development with React. My vision is to create a flashcard app. Flashcards being tools to learn new things, little note cards. You may have a question on one side and flip it over with the answer. I use them as I'm studying React. School children may use them to learn basic math facts. So that's the vision. We'll develop this together. I'm learning as I go, and I'm excited to have you with me. Today, we will knock out a couple cool things. Number one, we will create a mock of our initial app. We will think through the component hierarchy, and we will perform some initial development. As we do, there will be a core thing or theme, and that is thinking in React as we have been, but there is a new twist. The new twist is with Redwood Router. Routers are bits of web app functionality that translate URL requests to specific web application functionality. We will dig in as we go. First things first, though, let's pop over to the React website. My core habit as I develop new apps, this being my second new app, so it's not much of a habit, but it's a habit nonetheless, is to hop over here and visit the Thinking in React article to help stay grounded. So let's step through this. Number one, let's start with a mock. I have a mock, so let me open my mock. Here we go. This is the simple flashcard app that I have in mind to build. And we have main content area. This may be in this case, math problem, 37 plus 42. And then if you hit the button, flip to back, it shows you the answer on the back. That would be 79. There are buttons to go back and forward. There is information about the topic and the number of the flashcard that you're looking at, and some basic edit functionality. So this is my mock, similar to in the React article, their mock. We have data. I did create some example data. I guess I can fire that up too. So here's my example data. It is an array. Each item is a flashcard content with an ID, a front and a back, a topic, and a username. So here's the addition practice example that I show on my mock. All right, so some basic data. And now step one, let's break the UI into a component hierarchy. I love the simplicity of this. Draw boxes around every component in the mock and give them names. So let's do it. All right, so first of all, we will have, let's say, a box around the core thing here, a flashcard. We'll name it, we'll label these in a moment, but my vision is call this a flashcard. We often as well have called a wrapper component for the core functionality. Say the app component. And then we could also, really for this simple app, breaking it into a lot of chunks, maybe say overkill, but I'll just follow the guidance. So we may have, say, a flashcard content component. Certainly we have this chunk down below. It may be called controls. We'll ponder that, but there is really two chunks in here. Number one, there is some basic flashcard information, and then two, we have controls. And the controls could also be chunked into individual buttons. So I'll resist the urge to keep drawing boxes around those little buttons, but we potentially could. The key guidance, key question is how fine-grained should I go? And their guidance is consider the single responsibility principle. Each component ideally should do only one thing. If it ends up growing, it should be decomposed into smaller subcomponents. Yep, I think that sounds good. The flip side is as we're trying to go fast, chunking it into more components takes more time. But I do have a robust long-term vision here, so I'll probably err toward more components, which will make the top level look nice and clean. And it'll just take a little time. But as you may have noticed, speed is not my forte. We're slow coding with Keith, and so we'll take our time and make a robust, rock solid app. Okay, so I think this works. These are the components to get us started, and let's name them. So let's see, first of all, we will have, say, the flashcard app, or we'll just call this one flashcard. And this can be flashcard content. We'll have controls. Let's call this guy info. And at the root, we will have the app component. As I name these, I may prefix everything with flashcard. I don't know, we'll see. I think that works. So everything's named. We have a root, a parent, app, and then the flashcard, and then within it the content, info, and controls. So next step is to write out our component hierarchy. And so let's go ahead and do that. Let me knock that out real quick. Okay, so I took a moment to create the component hierarchy. Here is the hierarchy written out, and here we have the visual version. So it looks good. Now let's pop back over to our Thinking in React article and think through it. We've named the components, and I created the component hierarchy. Next step, build a static version in React. So it's time to implement the app. Their guidance is to build a static version that renders your data model, use other components, and pass data using props. So in this article, there is no reference or mention of routing or URL parameters, but I think this is where they fit in. In my mind, something I ponder is, our routing parameters is the URL part of the state or part of props. And in my mind, as I think through it in the context of this article, they're props. So I would update this step to include React or Redwood routing. So we will build a static version in React using props and the Redwood router. So let's think through that. Namely, routing allows us to dictate the behaviors in an app based on the URL. And this is a web app, and therefore it's quite reasonable that the URL be thoughtfully considered. There's generally been there was a trend toward single page apps in which the URL was essentially not used, but I've observed, say, a trend toward thoughtfully considering the URL and ensuring that it's reasonable. Because as I've experienced, if folks are using a browser, they will use the back and refresh buttons, and we can't control that. So we need to make sure that it just works, and routing will help enhance that behavior and ensure that the app works as expected. So what we need to do is think about what the URL looks like. So we'll have some base URL. In this case, my app will be hosted at flipagain.io. And then from there, we will have the URL parameters. So we'll start, I will call this flashcards. So this is the first chunk of my URL. And then you can have different bolt-ons, which provides a way or a method or a means to send information into the app. And namely, we can think about those. Essentially, they are properties that we are sending. We can think about them as variables or things that change, just like variables or props. So the first prop that I will send to this is the topic. Actually, let me back up. I think I would say, first of all, it's going to be the username. So ultimately, we will have multiple users for this app. And then after that, we will have the topic. I'm running out of space, so I'll just put it up here. We'll have a topic. In this case, the topic is something like addition practice. And then after that, we will have the number that we are looking at. This is, I would like it to be human readable and start with 1. So in JavaScript, arrays begin with 0 as the index. In this case, I want the URL to be, say, reasonable and jive with what the user is seeing. So, in, say, normal human behavior, we don't start counting with a 0. We start with 1. So I'm going to call it index plus 1. It's kind of a long, silly name, but that's okay. So our URL that we will use to access this app will be flipagain.io/flashcards/username/topic/index+1. And all these variables will ultimately be passed to our app as props. Okay, I think that works. So now let's head over to VS Code and begin developing. So first step is install Redwood. I did that previously using the command yarn create Redwood app in the folder of interest. In this case, it's FlipAgain. And it did its thing, downloading all the good stuff. It downloads. And here, let me hop into it. Here it is, FlipAgain. This is a, say, essential initial batch of files that Redwood provides. So let's go ahead and pop into it with VS Code. All right, so we have the API side and the web side. Right now, we will be focusing on the web side. The initial version will essentially not use the API side. We'll get something out the door that works just with, it's called the front end on the web. And let's go ahead and fire up the development server. So Control tick gets me my terminal. Here I am in the root. So I will start the Redwood development server with yarn rw for Redwood dev. That will kick it off. And it will open the browser to localhost 8910. We'll see that in just a moment. Here we go. So one thing to ponder is, well, how do we get this experience of a URL with a certain name or chunk, and how do we translate that to the user experience that we need? So this is what will look like, something like this. So right now it's showing a basic intro page here. So right out of the gates, it's showing us how to define the routes appropriately. So let's go look. There is a file called router here in the web directory. So under source, routes rather, not router. In this file, all page components from source pages are auto-imported. And we define routes associated with certain URLs. And those URLs will be associated with certain components, in this case, pages. We don't have to do, say, the initial setup from scratch. We will use a Redwood generator to do so for us. So let's create our first page. So we will have a page. Let me complement the component hierarchy. Essentially, let me change colors here. Right here in the say above the core flashcard, we will have a page. And the page will be, I will call it flashcard page. All right, so there is a component that sits yet above the app component, and it is a page component. So it's a Redwood thing, so let's go ahead and create it. So here in the root directory in a terminal, to create a page, I can run yarn redwood g for generate page, and I give it a name. I will give it the name flashcard page. So enter, and it will auto generate a few things for me. Flashcard page.js in particular. So it created a new folder and file, and there are some tests and stories for it, but right now we'll focus on the main JS page. And then it updated the routes for us. So if we go back to the routes, now we see the path /flashcard is associated with flashcard page, and it has a name, flashcard. All right, so now if we go back to our app, yep, here we go. Instead of the say intro screen, we see the flashcard page. Okay, so that's step number one. Let's go ahead and implement, let's go ahead and implement the username topic index +1 scheme. All right, so to do that, we will first go to the routes, and we will supplement this first with the username. And the Redwood groove is to, let me pop over to the routing params in the docs. Actually, let's go to just the routes. Here I am on the Redwood page. Let me go to routes, somewhere in the mix here. Redwood Router. And we can see some guidance here. Some nice, thoughtful, thorough guidance for us. In particular, what we will pass are parameters, route parameters. To match variable data in a path, we can use route parameters, which are specified by parameter names surrounded by curly braces, like this. Okay? And so let's go ahead and add one, username. So I added it like this. I'll just save that. Now we need to go to the page. So let's surf our way to the page that was created for us, flashcard page, flashcardpage.js. And now once we've added that URL parameter in the routes file, it will be available as a prop, auto magically via Redwood. So it's pretty cool. So let's just, first of all, let's just show it. Yeah, here's the username. All right, I'll save that, and we will confirm that we can see a username. So now the root flashcard URL is not defined, but there is a root or route rather with the username bolted onto it. So if I type that, here we go. Here's the username, Keith. Got it. Okay, so let's add the other parameters we need. We will also need the topic, and we will also need what I called index +1. And I will save that. We'll pop back over here, and we'll add an example topic like addition practice, and then say an index +1. It worked. Let's go ahead and output that. So we have the username. It will be provided as a prop. We need to deconstruct the props and grab them right here. So we will have the username, the topic, and the index +1. And here's the topic. And finally, here's the index +1. All right, so let's go check this out. So here we go. It worked. So the properties or the URL parameters that I defined are now passed through to my page. Got it. Okay, so the next step, let's go look at our component hierarchy. And we need to add to the top here the page on the component hierarchy. I can do that later. But the page will essentially route everything through to the app. So the first thing to do now is to create our app component. So let's go ahead and create it. We can use a generator also. Yarn Redwood generate component. And I will name it flashcard app. I'm beginning with a capital letter using standard React, naming capitalization convention of starting with a capital letter in camel case. All right, so it created this component under the components directory under the flashcard app. directory it created flashcard app.js. Got it. So let's now include that here. I can go ahead and zap some of this. And let me go ahead and include flashcard app right here. And control space will auto import it for me. Got it. So I'm a fan of doing little chunks of coding and then basic functional testing. I'll come back here, refresh. It didn't break, but it didn't do anything either. So let's, first of all, let's pop it over to our new component. It's under components, flashcard app, flashcard app.js. Here it is. First things first, let's see what we have here. Flashcard app is what it's showing, an H2 tag, and then where to find it. And we see that flashcard app, and then find me in, etc. Okay, so it is grabbing the flashcard app. We need the properties. We need to grab the properties that we are passing in. Well, we need to pass them in also. So from the page, we'll need this basic information. So the username equals username, topic equals topic, and index +1 equals index +1. So there we go. And we'll pop over to the app and deconstruct them. Username, topic, index +1. All right, so I have them. And just for kicks, I will just gonna confirm that they're working. All right, so I saved it. So we'll go back to the web browser and we will see Keith, addition practice, index +1. Yep, there we go. It's all jammed together, but we're seeing the props are getting passed through to the app where we need them. Got it. All right, so I can get rid of some of the placeholder content, and let's think a moment. This is where I'd like to adopt the style that the folks at Redwood have set as a precedent for me, at least. And so let me pop over to the Redwood blog tutorial app. This is the Redwood blog. So if you work through the Redwood tutorial, if I pop over to Redwood and start the tutorial, we will see that the goal in this simple yet thorough tutorial is a blog. And I've done that, and there are, as part of the tutorial, you walk through the creation of a simple database and scaffolding to help you view and perform basic edits of the contents of that simple database. And the scaffolding creates posts. They're, so blog post. And so one of the files is post.js, and it shows, I should probably fire this up in the browser, but I won't for now. But it shows a list of posts. And essentially I want to show a list of flashcards, so it's rather analogous. So there There are some helper functions, and then the main component is post list, but this is the default export, and so this file is exporting this component. And what we see here is let's see what they're importing. They're importing the posts and a username. And within the username, or excuse me, within the post, there is other information describing the post. And this would be analogous, say, to my flashcard, a flashcard app. So this is the core, say, component, but there's a component that lives above this. It's called the post cell. So let's look at the post cell. Here it is. The post cell is conceptually equivalent to what I have been calling the app component. It's the component that sits at the root of the component hierarchy, and essentially its core task is to go grab the data, and then once it has the data, it sends it appropriately to the routes of interest. In this case, here it is. It's sending, upon success, it sends the data, posts, to the post component. So the post component is, I would say, fairly simple. It just accepts data, and it presents the data however it presents it. And there are some typical behaviors here that the Redwood cell, or call it the app, is handling for us. The data is grabbed. In this case, it's focused on GraphQL, and we grab the data, define a query, and it's executed on our behalf. As it's executing, we can show a loading state. If the data that's returned is empty, then we can return something. And upon success, say a batch of post, we can return what we want to return. So I will emulate this style. So I'm not using cells right out of the gates because, in part, I'm not using GraphQL yet. But I will emulate this style. So in our app, so what I'm calling the app, I would say we also could call a cell. So it could be called flashcard cell. Got it? So before we define or fill out the app, let's go ahead and define some of these basic helper components, and namely success. Export const success equals and we will send it a flashcard. And I would say the flashcard will need a flashcard. And it will certainly fill it out. It will need more, but off the cuff, upon success, we will send to the flashcard component a flashcard. Straightforward enough. Kind of like this. And we need to, if we send it, actually, let's see here. We will need to send it, or the data that we'll have is actually flashcards plural. So I'm showing, well, in my mind, we will grab all the flashcards, or at least for a certain topic. And I will have these. And so we'll need a function. Let's just create a function for now called get data. say get flashcard data. And this guy will return, at the moment, it will return our default info, which I have defined already. So let me go grab that default info. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and create a new folder called util, and under that I will create a new file called default flashcards.js, and here is the default set of flashcards that I created. Voila, default flashcards. Okay, so now I have some defaults. So in this case, I will simply return default flashcards. I think that will work. I don't need the return statements or return, so this just returns the default flashcards. All right, so it looks kind of silly, but I think it'll work. And let's go ahead and, upon success, so we have a success case here. And again, I'm just taking baby steps, coding and say functional testing as I go. So my app will have some basic functionality. So first things first, I will need to get data. So const flashcards equals get flashcard data. And then once I have the flashcards, I will return my success case. And the success case will be given the data that I grab. So in the Redwood cell, they do this. So I'm following the Redwood cell habit. So success, and we call it, I believe, well, there's a scheme to name the property according to what you define in the query. In this case, it's all custom. So I know that this success component is accepting a flashcards property. So I will give it the flashcards. Got it. So it sends, grabs the data, and upon success, it sends or returns the success case. The success case or success component returns a flashcard. In this case, at the moment, let me just return one, the first one. Flashcards 0. Okay, got it. So we need to implement the flashcard app. We haven't done that. This is not, yep, it's not yet implemented. So let's go ahead and implement that. We can create it initially with a generator. So yarn redwood generate component flashcard. Got it. And so let's pop back over to VS Code, open it up. Here we go. This now should accept a flashcard, or flashcards at the moment. And let's just show the contents of it. So JSON.stringify Oops, it's got to be in curly braces. Stringify flashcards. Okay. All right, so let's go back to the web browser and see if I wired it all up correctly. I should see a bunch of data. And I didn't. Okay, yeah, so let me go back here. Flashcard's not defined, so let me pop back up to the app. I need to import this. It's now finding it, so auto import works. Now let's go try. And it's showing this. Let's see here. All right, let's go pop over to, let's see, the app is returning the success case. I send it the flashcards. The flash card is actually passed. Let's go to the app. I was importing it incorrectly. So now do we see it? Yes, here we go. Cool. Okay, so we have, we've wired it up so that if we hit this, a particular URL, these URL parameters are ultimately passed through. We checked that. We're not using them just yet, but we take the route sends the request to the page. The page grabs the props, the URL parameters as props, and we pass them on to the app. The app is analogous to a Redwood cell. We're developing the app in the style of a Redwood cell, where we define a success case, error case, etc. So let's just work through the success case for now, and then we'll incorporate the error in the other states. All right, so first of all, why don't we incorporate the username topic and index +1. So we will use these to grab the data. So these will need to be used or passed to the function get flashcard data. At least, so my vision is to grab, I always grab a chunk of flashcards called a stack, which is specific to a username and a certain topic. So in this case, to get the data, I don't need the index +1. I will use that though to show the particular flashcard of interest. So here in the default cards, I will simply, this is an array. I know it's an array. We can say make it robust, more robust in the future, but for now, let's just filter. Filter it to the username of interest, so flashcard. We're going to create a callback. The callback steps through each item in the array. Each item is a flashcard, and if it returns, if the callback returns true, then the item is included in the new filtered array. This creates a new array. It doesn't manipulate the existing. So we need the flashcard username to equal the username provided, and flashcard topic to equal the topic provided. And we need to import or accept these parameters. Voila. Okay, so now our topic and username should be grabbed. And in the defaults, I named the initial username local. My thinking is if folks are using it without, say, signing up, it'll just be local data. So I called it local for now. And one of the topics is intro. So if I go here and use the username of local and the topic of intro and start out with number 1, something went wrong. So username is not defined. So let's check this out. Maybe I forgot to save it. Save. And that was it. Okay. All right, so now it's not breaking. It's not showing much new, but it is showing, yeah. Okay, so this is new. It is actually grabbing the appropriate flashcard. So the username is local. The topic is intro. And I'm showing one item. Okay, got it. So we are successfully, sending URL parameters to the page, to the app, to the component, and we're presenting them, or the appropriate data. Got it. Okay, so let's make it prettier. So let's think about what we want to show. Let's go to the app, or the component, the flashcard component, and update it. So why don't we pop over to it, flashcard. It takes a flashcard. We will also believe we will need the index +1 as a property. And I will show first of all, the front. Flashcard.front. That's super rudimentary, but that's the way I roll. Just get little chunks done to make sure everything's talking. So I should have a flashcard populated. I know I do, in fact, because we just looked at it. And the front of this one says, welcome to FlipAgain, click flip to flip. Okay, so that works. The bottom content here is from the page. I was leaving it here because I want the example of the link. All right, so I'm going to sketch a little bit of this without adding components, just to make a little progress. It's getting toward an hour also. Time flies. And so the vision, I would say, for the next few minutes is to just get the basic data to confirm that what we're looking at, and include a link. The theme being routing in this episode. So we have the front of our flashcard. Let me get rid of the. Well, let's go ahead and add a link. So check this out. So this is we will need to add a link to the next. So a couple things. Number one, we'll need a button. Let's add a button. Flip to back. We'll make this guy big, NH1. We'll just include the React fragment. We'll show the front, a button, flip the back, and then a link, 2 links. How about 2 links? A link to the previous and a link to the back. So first of all, if index +1 is somewhere in the middle, then we will need links going both ways. If it's at the front, if it's 1, then there's no, 1 is the beginning. So if index +1 is greater than 1, then return a link to the prior one. So the link will be well, we'll fill it out. So previous. Let me sketch it first. That's good for now. Okay, so we need to import a link. Its link is a component provided by Redwood Router. Link provides the link to a certain spot. The flashcard function is created for you automatically, and it jives with the name defined in the route that you defined in the routes. Okay, and we can also pass it an object with the URL parameters, and then it will create the URL parameters appropriately. So the username is username. Let's see, it's in the flashcard. And the topic is also in the flashcard. Topic. And the index +1 equals index +1 minus 1. So we will dynamically create that. And this is long and ugly. Let me get it all straight. So I have these guys. Oh yeah, this doesn't need to be. Oh yeah, and this is not an equals. All right, there we go. So routes, also need to import routes from Redwood Router. All right, so now we should have a link. We need to pass index +1. I don't know if I did that. Let me save this. Let's go to the app and make sure we're passing, upon success, index +1. So index +1 equals index +1. And I've got to grab this, and I need to pass it here. Okay. All right, so here's the scoop. If we define in the URL a certain user, topic, and index +1, it will send those parameters as props to the page. The page is sending them to this app. The app is using them to grab the data, the flashcards. Once I have the flashcards, I'm sending them to the success property, and I can also pass any properties that are provided on through to the success component, rather, not property. So I destructure those, and I use them here in the flashcards, in the flashcard component. And then the flashcard component destructures the flashcard and the index +1. It shows the front. There's a button, flip to back, and then a link. If the index +1 is greater than 1, then it shows a link to the previous. The link component is from the Redwood Router. We provide the to property. The value of the to property is obtained via the routes dot named function that's provided by Redwood, and we pass it username, topic, and index +1. If these jive with, essentially these will be added to the URL on our behalf, And so we should be able to go look at the link and confirm that it's created correctly. In this case, if we're looking at the first one, it shouldn't be there at all, but we'll put it in, say, the second and confirm that it shows up. So if all's well, we have a link, and that link's not showing. Okay, well, it shouldn't, as I just noted. So let's go to the second item, and here it is. We have this previous link, and at the bottom left, we can see that the link now points to flashcard/local/intro/1. So if I click it, voila. So let's look at like 3. And now it's pointing to 2. I'm not grabbing the appropriate flashcard data, but that's okay. My link is working. And that was a fundamental goal. So let's put them in the right spot. There's a link. And I just broke something. Let's put that back. What did I break? That works. Oh, okay. So right after that. All right, so I will move that to that. Why don't I put the, I'll just put the button for now. Oh, it's fine. It's just squished together. I'll work on styling in a bit. So let's create the second link and then wrap up. So the second link, I'll copy and paste. So this will be pointing to the next item. So the link name will be next for the next flashcard. And if let's see, I will need to know if I'm at the last flashcard item. So I will need to know the length of my flashcard list. So let's add a property, flashcard list length. And if my flashcard list length, if the next +1 is, let's see, less than flashcard list length. So if I have 15 of them, and if I'm at 15, then I shouldn't show the next link because there is not a next length. I shouldn't show a next link. Got it. So it will only show up if that's the case. And I can send it the username, the topic, and the index +1 to get to the next item. So let's see if it worked. Let's pop over to the browser. Refresh. It's not showing it. Oh yeah, I need to pass in flashcard list length. So let's go back to the app. I need here flashcard list length. And if I have it there, I need to send it as a prop. And if I have it there, I need to send it here. And in this case, I need to define it. So I will, at this point, know I will have the array of items. And so I will dynamically create this flashcards.length. So it feels error prone, if the array isn't defined, etc. But we'll tighten all this up in a bit. But for now, I get the data, and so now I have the array, and therefore I can define the length. So if I go look at this now, I should be able to see the next link. Do we have it? We've got it. Okay, as I hover over it, down on the bottom, we see, oh, check this out. we're looking at number 2, and I can't point and move off the link at the same time, but if you look at the bottom left, what we are doing is concatenating 2 strings. We're not actually removing, or we're not actually adding 2 integers. So we'll need to think through that. But that'll give us something to look forward to, along with, of course, developing this. I try to keep the sessions to about an hour, and we're already past that. So let me wrap for now with a quick summary. So again, a theme that I've had in mind is, how does routing fit in to thinking in React? So we created our mock. We drew boxes around the various components, created our component hierarchy, and then began building a static version. In the Redwood scheme, we use routing. Routing is good because this is a web app and people use the back buttons and like to bookmark, say, a URL that points to a specific state of your app. I think that's a good thing. So we'll use routing. And when using routing, there's a whole kind of flow of things. We define a page. The page is associated with certain components. The page in routing, the routing scheme can take URL parameters and essentially pass those down through the page as props. And as I described in my mind, I think of props as, or routing URL parameters as props, not necessarily state. And so when we were creating our mock, we defined the components, and we also thought through what the URL and URL parameters will look like. And we've created our page. We just started creating the app and then the flashcard. We didn't quite get to the subcomponents, but we're creating little sketches of what they will look like. So it's rocking along, slow and steady. This is Slow Coding with Keith, and if you're fairly new to the game, hopefully it's valuable. If you're, you can always run me on double time. I'm not offended, and it's a joy to do this, and I hope you find it valuable. Next time we will hop back in and begin continuing development. So until then, have a great day, and that's a wrap. Bye-bye.